Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels. Uh, our guest today is Elizabeth Sandifer of Eruditorum Press and The Last War in Albion, uh, blog slash novel, all at eruditorumpress.com. Phil brought me to this because he's like, "Did you know that there's a novel about the magic war between Alan
Well,
Moore and Grant Morrison?" And I went, "I
and
did not."
that's where
And
I'd,
he's
I'd
like,
immediately stick a finger up and say, well, it's not quite a novel because it's
"Okay,
it's accounting it's accounting real events that happened, with the publication of various art, and it's more of a book of criticism, you know.
okay."
It's definitely falls under the large umbrella of creative nonfiction, which was a subject that I fell backwards into in college, and find immensely entertaining. This is a book that I would put on the shelf right next to, and I imagine you'd eventually talk about Morrison Super Gods, but it,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels like you looked at these figures, and took the approach of their magical perspective on the world and then reapplied it to our world as opposed to just their own books. If that's to
Yeah. No,
kind of
that's
a high
fair.
value.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I'm
I
gonna
wanted.
really
Oh.
quickly slip in. Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome to
Hello,
the
it's good to be
show.
here. No, I just sort of wanted to show up, hiding, like I've been hiding in the corner the whole time.
At some point, our guests should probably talk. My
Hello.
apologies.
Yeah,
Hello.
no, you're fine. Um, yeah, that was roughly where I started. Was really wanting to take what Alan Moore and Grant Morrison think about magic just dead seriously and at face value.
Yeah.
And write a history of their careers, as a magical war, which obviously I don't actually think that, there was a magical war per se, not least because Alan Moore really doesn't have much interest in Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're they're so similar and yet so diametrically opposed and pissy little children about each other. And that's just fun. That's just
It's
tremendous fun.
tremendous, tremendous fun. It really is. Because I distinctly remember again in college the moment when, I think it was over, uh, Moore doing a presentation and someone in the audience got huffy over, he got preemptively upset over not being able to ask a question about why did you hurt Batgirl? And Moore responded with, his typical lengthy. And then there was someone else who mentioned his use of the gollywog. We're getting way off track here. But it was on the beat. It was on the comics beat when Grant Morrison
Yeah.
published like a long, hey, here's my here's how Alan Moore has treated me over the years, so to speak. So yeah, it
So
was fascinating.
fun fact, the actual initiating event on that whole exchange on ComicsBeat that you're talking about
Hmm.
was there was a web chat for the Kickstarter for the Harvey Pekar Memorial statue in a library in Cleveland. And
Hmm.
one of its higher value funding tiers was a video chat with Alan Moore where you could ask questions. And
Hmm.
I, knowing that I intended to do Last War in Albion in a few years, backed at that level. And my question was about Grant Morrison. Uh, and so the original Alan Moore quote at the kind of root of that whole Alan Moore Grant Morrison feud thing on the beat is
Hmm.
in response to my question at that Harvey
Wow.
Pekar Memorial thing. So I actually
Thank you for
What,
solved
asking
all of
that.
that. Sorry.
what,
Thank you. Thank you
what was
for
what was the question and what was his answer?
Roughly, the question was somewhat surprisingly, you are not the only British wizard comics writer,
hmm
uh, but you've never really spoken on the work of Grant Morrison. What do you think of it? And the answer was roughly, I don't think of it.
yeah, politely. It was honestly hilariously mirrored between the exchange of Dr. William Gull and is it Robert Lee
Yeah,
of the yeah. I very much have not been looking forward to this. You're a fraud and a charlatan, you know.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. Moore was vaguely polite in that one. Obviously, things eventually escalated to that Alan Moore, the last interview. That was not his last
Mm,
interview,
hmm
where he works himself up into enough of a froth to deliver the, I think, all timer of a line, which leaves only the herpes-like persistence of Grant Morrison.
Yes. Yes. It was it's pretty hard to, yeah, that's an all-timer. All-timer of an
Yeah,
insult for sure. Um, so I mean, I absolutely love the seriousness with which you take their hatred of each other. Um, and again, it's just you know, it's there's I'm stuttering because normally I tend to compare things. Oh, this thing is like this thing. But I think Last War in Albion is one of those works that I can't think of anything else to compare it to in the best way
Ru-
possible.
roughly, my internal comparison has always been: what if you wrote literary criticism like Game of Thrones?
Okay, yeah, no, that's
Literary
exactly it.
criticism as sprawling epic fantasy series.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's absolutely a framework that enhances and
And you gave me a
fast
hard
it.
time for calling it a novel?
I
I
mean,
didn't.
No, I
I
I
wasn't
did
say I
not.
didn't
did.
I
say
love
I
that.
was
That's
looking at
great.
him. I was
Yes.
looking at Phil. I'm sorry. I didn't make that clear enough for the listeners at home. I was giving Phil the evil eye.
See, when you say it, I don't know if it's correct, but when she says it, I know it's correct. So that's where it comes into play. Yeah, yeah. So
I mean, because I can't. I view it as nonfiction, but it's absolutely nonfiction that just casually at one point drops a quote with the explanation, said William Blake in a 2019 seance.
right, absolutely, absolutely. Those sorts of one-liners, or I mean, and William Blake is again a figure that is massively prominent in From Hell, and
Yeah,
or not massive. Well, yes, and then between the two of them because and I think this view largely comes from reading about Blake and your work of he's kind of one of, if not the main grandfather of comics and
you can
in
certainly make that case. Yeah,
yeah of combining words and images and absolutely from the magical perspective of that level of influence.
yeah, because of course he's a literal visionary who's writing this bespoke mythology that uh, came to him roughly.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that again, I hesitate because it's he in hindsight and at the time I think was regarded as a little mad, but I think that there's still a lot of truth in that madness. And
Absolutely. Well, and
yeah,
he's less mad than he lets on. There's a
okay.
bit in Marriage of Heaven and Hell
Hmm.
where Blake just opens a section with, so I was having dinner with the prophets Ezekiel and I forgot who the other prophet is off the top of
Hmm.
my head.
Hmm.
But you know, Blake explains. He asks them, so did you actually hear the voice of God? How did that whole thing work for you? And the prophet gives the answer, well, I didn't hear a literal voice. It's more, I imagined the conversation with God, which
Yeah,
is really funny when you've opened with, so I was having dinner with the prophet Ezekiel.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. Just kind of
And
like
Isaiah.
just
Isaiah, thank you.
there we go. Yeah, the inwardly looping sorts of ways.
I
Which
might not be good for much, but Googling things.
there we go. Top-notch Googler. So where we're at with the history, I'm trying to approach From Hell now. Like, sort of we've been circling it. And so you're in the
From Hell,
90s.
for those handful listening who don't know, Alan Moore, Eddie Campbell. Mom, it's the one you bought from Eddie for me after Eddie sold me three other books, and I said, but I keep meaning to buy your master edition. Hi, Mom. Hi, Britt. Hi, Adam. Hi, John. That might be all of our listeners. Actually, we got an email from a gentleman named Chris. So, hi, Chris. We might have another listener that I didn't know about.
Well, and obviously you'll get a couple from me. So hi, Sean.
There we go.
There we go.
And it's and that's where I jump in and say, why didn't anyone tell me how good this book was before? And I facetiously say
Did
that
they not? Did
no,
you
they
make it
didn't.
Yeah,
this far in
They didn't.
college?
Phil,
No, they didn't.
Phil,
They didn't.
A, I wasn't aware that you hadn't read it.
Right,
B,
right.
I know that more than once I have listed it among the 3 or 4 Alan Moore works that I like more than Watchmen.
That was, oh yeah, instantly, instantly. This is one of those books that I now, in hindsight, having read this, don't realize why people don't aren't more obsessed with it than Watchmen.
I
Clearly the
mean,
people who are still stuck on Watchmen
It
haven't digested it.
it doesn't have people in their underwear
Not
running
I
enough
mean,
around all
people in
the
their
time.
underwear.
I guess this
They're
is
even
where I
more
should let
naked.
Yeah.
I guess this is where I should let Elizabeth know that I am a holder of minority opinions on both Morrison and Moore. I appreciate their genius and think they're fantastic writers. My favorite works of theirs tend to be not other people's favorite works of theirs. My favorite Moore is Halo Jones and Jack Be Quick, and my favorite Morrison is Kill Your Boyfriend.
Tell
Um,
Your Boyfriend is an excellent choice.
right.
I haven't read that one yet. It's
Philip
my
Bond
embarrassment.
kills it.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things, and I'm always
Right.
embarrassed I haven't read it yet.
Um, but I hate using the word overrated because I think that in general, anybody in the comics field can't be overrated because comics are inherently underrated. But I wish there weren't so many people in comics who thought that the battle for best comic writer was really a battle for second best comic writer because Alan Moore is clearly the best. Because I don't agree. I
And
think he's
all
very, very good.
and that's
There's
for all
nothing that he's ever done that I don't think is brilliant, and therefore I don't argue that he's in the conversation. But I also find him the Dickens of comics writers, which is like you have to prepare yourself and set aside a month if you really want to dive in. Um,
Yeah, I mean, for my money, certainly if you're going to talk within the kind of narrow band of comics that comics fans are thinking of when they talk about the best comics writers, you're not going to bring in if you're going to stubbornly not bring in Hergé or something.
hmm hmm
Um, Moore is very much the one writer. It's hard to think of another writer with a DC book who you can credibly take and argue as one of the great all-time writers, period.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'll go pretty hard for Tom King, but that's a whole different conversation.
But like Alan Moore isn't a war criminal, and that's nice.
I do. I do
Oh,
appreciate that part of Alan Moore. And
uh,
you know, yeah, it's funny how
that
the British version of
that
the room has cleaner hands, but at the same time, like Alan,
I mean,
so
that comes down to we don't know what he specifically did. So I mean, I'm not absolutely saying that he's not a war
no,
criminal, but
maybe he's one of the good CIA agents, whatever the fuck that means.
well, no, what I was going to say is, I mean, particularly because he was one of the ones that got the fuck out, maybe he's at least one of the ones that, like, and for that matter, I do know he was one of the ones that was uncomfortable with what was going on and what he was doing, which
Sure, no, I mean
is a
Tom
step.
King is absolutely one of my. Tom King might be my outright favorite war criminal. I don't want to sleep on Tom King here.
I mean,
Tom, these are the opinions of Elizabeth Sandifer. They do not represent 22 panels.
this is where the only war criminal who I could think in the moment to say I don't even never mind. I don't keep a list of Nick Cage from Lord of War is probably my favorite war criminal.
All right,
Um,
all right.
but yeah. I swear I almost said Stalin and I regret even mentioning I almost said Stalin because I
Yeah.
don't even like Stalin. Anyway, um,
Mandy, if you're listening, please continue working with me to schedule Tom's next
I am so
appearance.
sorry. I guess But at the same time, like
And and
I
and, uh,
I will
and
hold on.
Elizabeth, I don't hold your opinion against you because I mean it like
Yeah.
there's
It's
truth to
I,
it.
I,
I think
There's
if
truth
I
to it,
had
and
known you were trying to book Tom King, I might have been marginally
it's
more
not trying
diplomatic.
to
rebook,
book Tom King. He's been on
rebook.
4 times. We're trying to have him. Tom's a friend.
Ah, all right,
This
fine,
is where
fine.
I haven't met Tom.
I'm not speaking from only on air and like
That's okay.
No, no, I
That's
get
I
you, I
okay.
mean,
get
there are
you.
certain things
It's
that he can't talk about, like even with his wife, much less with the guy that's like
yeah,
I'm more in the friendly stage still rather than friend, but like
Right, right, right. No, I get you.
yeah. And
Um,
this is where it's so first of all, I would say that who would absolutely say that Alan Moore is a better writer than Tom King? I think Tom King would agree
oh yes,
that Alan Moore.
Tom King has
Hmm.
said that Alan Moore is a better writer than
Absolutely. And in that regard,
because he told me that he wanted to one day write
hmm
a Batman story as well as Alan Moore had. And when I told him that I thought he had,
hmm
I think his words were "fuck you, you don't know anything."
okay.
he absolutely has. Killing Joke is the nadir of Moore's career, frankly.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I would agree with that too. Um, but I guess so. The reason Moore continues, not just the yeah, it's pretty startling that someone who wrote about people who run around in their underwear is potentially one of the greatest writers of all time. I think that the fact that he is, in my mind, the only writer who doesn't have a book that he also drew that is in conversation for best writer. I think that's where he stands apart from most other
Well,
No,
people who
that's
are
absolutely
writers
true.
only. Yeah,
I mean
the
that's
only
not
writers.
true on a couple of things. First of all, like Alan Moore does have comic strips that he drew from his
Books,
early career.
whole
They've
books.
only they've only been collected into
Yeah,
book form in Britain, but that doesn't mean that they
and
weren't
even that only
collected into
Maxwell
book
the Magic
forms.
Cat. Roscoe
Right.
Moscow
Mhm.
has yet to be collected.
Oh, okay. It's funny
Um,
because
second, as I just said, I would
uh-huh.
put Tom into that conversation, and I guess he's drawn his own covers once or twice, but that was much more of a joke.
Yeah.
There's another Brit that I won't say the name of. Actually, there are two other Brits, one
hmm
of which I think belongs in the conversation, and the other everybody else thinks belongs in the conversation that I don't feel like talking about right now because they both wound up
hmm
being really bad actors. Um,
Ah, yeah, those two.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
so like the to the extent that Alan Moore is among the great writers without drawing, it's only I think because he's among the first generation of comics writers who were great writers writing comics because they wanted to write comics rather than good to great writers who couldn't write novels or couldn't get published as novelists. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does. It's an interesting distinction, you know. Um,
To drag kicking and screaming back to the topic, though, I think kind of
As you should, because you're the guest professor.
I
thank you.
know. I think that kind of the trump card more gets to play in any debate about, writers, all-time great writers is he's written from hell and Tom King hasn't. And
Well,
That's
yeah.
neither frankly have, Ellis or Gaiman or anyone else. You don't have much in the way of writers who have done DC, who have also done dense literary magnum opuses like From Hell.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, if
which
we're going that way,
I should also strategically mention.
Transmetropolitan and Animal Pound. Animal Pound's not as dense.
Transmet's great. I love Transmet. There is no comparing it to From Hell in terms of literary weight.
Guess this is going to depend on our definition of literary, and I guess literary and weight are things that I have always been annoyed when people think they need to go together. But I'm
No,
that student, Elizabeth. I'm
right.
warning you now.
Right. I mean, and I'm long since out of academia, but I did start with a PhD in English before discovering that it was easier to be a blogger than an adjunct professor, which
I
we don't
which
need to
is
get
which
into.
is sad but true.
I was warned away from higher education in English by some economically minded professors who said that if you go for a master's in English, you're never gonna make that money back. You know,
Not as a professor.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You can
basically.
make it back in
So,
advertising.
it
You can make it back at
was.
some law firms who want good writers to prepare their litigators.
Yeah.
I
But
didn't say
like,
you could make it back in ways where you could look
Sorry,
yourself in the mirror.
in literary criticism, a master's degree in literary criticism. Yeah,
yeah,
it was that level of
yeah.
dissuasion.
No, I got all the way to the useless PhD.
Mm.
And so I don't want to dismiss the kind of, traditional great work of literature aesthetic as something that matters, while
Hmm.
also noting that I make my money blogging about Doctor Who and comic books.
Right.
So,
Well, and I
Living the
guess
dream.
uh,
yeah,
I should also clarify. I'm not saying that I don't think it matters. I think that there are some people, and I don't know, and I'm not trying to say that you're one of them, who think that what made a great piece of literary work 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago is automatically still the only thing that I mean, I'm certain you've run across them in academia. Like, you don't write like Dickens, so you're not. I mean, I've met people who think
yeah,
Salinger is not great literature because it's not as dense as Dickens.
Well, they'd be wrong too.
yeah. I too have met idiots.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great.
uh,
Um,
but From Hell was not hard to get 30,000 words about, which I
I
mentioned
Oh
because it's
no,
the technical reason I'm on this podcast is I have
mhm,
no idea
mhm.
when you're actually releasing, but
probably tomorrow,
oh cool. Then on the
maybe
31st,
later tonight.
all right. Yeah, on
Within
the
24 hours.
cool. On the 31st, my 30,000 word From Hell chapter will be dropping on the blog.
Do
I
you
look
want
forward
me
to
to
that.
drop it on the 31st? I could do that.
Uh no, I don't think that matters too much.
Okay.
Okay.
I think,
I
yeah.
just like every once in a while somebody will say, "Hey, can you hold this? I want it to be in conjunction with something." So, I
I
figured I'd
mean,
offer.
you're like a week before, and I figure why give people alternatives to reading my thing on the 31st?
There we go.
There you
And
go.
now,
There you
if
go. That's a good
that
argument.
that also gives them time to reread From Hell if they
But it's
want.
only
Which
30,000 words. So, are you
Yeah.
saying that asking you for the audiobook version right now live would be inappropriate?
I
Given the
don't
time
have.
constraints.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think I could get it in an hour and 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
a flaw.
Yeah. And
Um,
and and
it's not even my longest chapter. I dropped a 60,000 word Sandman chapter
I
about a
love,
year ago.
by the way, I want to personally thank you for that because it allowed me to say goodbye to the Sandman in the way of like re-experiencing it and reliving those highs through the modern lens. So it felt very cathartic to read that.
Thank you. No,
Yeah,
it was cathartic to write it too, frankly.
yeah, yeah,
Um, One of the more harrowing things I've written, but one of the ones I'm proudest of as well.
yeah, yeah. And I am also very, very much looking forward to the From Hell chapter because it's what blows me away about it is how it sets out to be a masterwork and it lands as a masterwork.
What's funny is it doesn't quite set out to be a masterwork because
Okay.
nominally this was supposed to be 8 page chapters throughout.
Oh, interesting.
Because From Hell starts serializing in Steve Bissett's doomed horror anthology Taboo,
Okay.
Yeah.
where it quickly balloons to nearly 50 page chapters, but nominally it's supposed to be a kind of sane length to put in something like that.
Interesting.
And it just mushrooms out of Alan Moore's control almost immediately and stays there for a decade.
I see. I see. Okay.
Um,
Admittedly, I say that having thinking of chapter two
right.
that really starts jumping out as, oh wow, this
That is
is
that is right around when it clearly is not going to be anything like Alan Moore initially suggested.
which
Um,
is
there,
for the best way.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's four chapters of From Hell I kind of use as my anchor points, and
Mm.
chapter two is very much the first
Mm.
big turning point in it,
Yeah.
because it's the one where the comic acquires its insane ambition.
Yeah. Yeah. Walking up the hill to meet God
Yeah,
is yeah, that's something. I had seen just that page and thought it was at the end of the book for how
yeah,
like
no, no,
even just
no, no.
yeah, even
Yeah, how
just
climactic it is, but no, no, no,
right.
that's setup.
Yeah. So when I hit that upon reading, it was kind of an oh shit um, of just wow, there's going to be so much more to this than anticipated. What are the other three chapters that you anchor with?
My other three are chapter four, the chapter that is basically all just William Gull and his coachman driving around London talking about architecture,
Hmm.
which
And
is
Masons.
and
Yeah,
Freemasonry, yeah,
yeah.
and is the chapter that Alan Moore credits with turning him into a wizard.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, there's a line in it where Gull says to Netley, the only place that gods and demons inarguably exist is inside the human mind, where they
Yeah,
are real in all their grandeur and monstrosity.
yeah,
And as Moore tells it, he wrote that line, looked at it, and went, oh shit, I believe this is completely true, and I'm going to have to
yeah.
rearrange my entire worldview. Now, that
Wow.
doesn't quite work because there's about 3 years between writing it and becoming a wizard, but
Sure, sure.
it's a slow burn realization. It's still
Yeah,
clearly quite pivotal for Moore.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
my other two are chapter 10, the Oops All Dismemberment chapter,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the final one, Gull Ascending.
Ah, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. That's yeah. Upon when reading them, those are probably the other pieces were the connective tissue, I guess,
Yeah,
if those were bones.
I need to ask a couple of remedial questions here,
Okay.
please.
just because I have always been the person in general way more interested in the books themselves than the creators beyond the books.
Hmm.
Um, you said that this was before Alan became a wizard. I need to understand what we mean by that. Did he declare himself a wizard? Did he go to Hogwarts? Did he
Very
like
famously, Alan Moore at his 40th birthday party gets a little drunk and declares that henceforth he's going to be a wizard.
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So that's
Um,
question one.
It's a good one.
Um the second one is like I honestly didn't know that there was an Alan Moore, um, Grant Morrison real thing.
Yeah. No, they
Can
really
you
don't
give
like each
me
other.
the brief
so
brief
the
history of like
the brief history of that. Grant Morrison is
just in case
very
either one
adamant.
of them
Yeah,
ever deigns to talk to me so I don't piss them off.
right. Grant Morrison has their first professional credits a little before Alan Moore in 1979 in an obscure Scottish magazine called Near Myths, where most notable for Brian Talbot publishing some of the early adventures of Luther Arkwright there. Then drifts out of comics in a failed attempt to become a rock star, and gets back into them as one of the first people to uh, catch the rising tide of British writers that Alan Moore causes. Morrison and Gaiman both get into DC at the same talent search meeting where Karen Berger and Dick Giordano travel to London to recruit writers. So Morrison's comics career that anyone cares about follows Moore, and Morrison has a understandable irritation at being treated as an Alan Moore imitator when they are more complicated than that. Moore appears to have had relatively friendly relationships with Morrison for a couple of years. There's pretty strong evidence that Moore was the person who recommended Morrison to Berger. Both Moore and Berger claim that. Morrison says no, but Morrison isn't the one in the most position to know that exactly.
Mhm.
Uh, and they would say that, wouldn't they? As it were. But somewhere in the early 90s, when Grant Morrison is writing this gossip column called Drivel in, I forget the magazine, but some British comics mag, they they say some shit about Moore, and Moore never talks to them again, roughly. Uh, Morrison continues taking shots at Moore. Moore basically completely ignores Morrison. You can find a couple instances where he's not doing that. Most obviously in his unpublished essay, Fossil Angels, which has some incredible subtweets about Grant Morrison in it, like proper rapper with a ghostwriter, what the fuck happened period of the Kendrick Drake feud.
Nice.
Level stuff, but some clear. The best line in there is when Moore is talking about Fossil Angels is an essay about magic,
Mhm.
and Moore lays out some claims about magic, and then witheringly says, "Or you can just spadge on a sigil, I guess. Never fails, apparently."
Oh, that is in
Um,
reference to the Morrison essay Pop Magic, in which he
yes,
encourages
well,
masturbation upon sigils.
the famous publicity stunt to raise
Hmm.
sales for the Invisibles.
Yep, the invisible
Um,
sales drive. Yep.
Yeah. So it's a very and there's another line in there that makes it very clear Moore has read Pop Magic.
Hmm.
But otherwise Moore doesn't really say shit about Grant Morrison. He just does the John Draper "I don't think of you at all" thing. Um, until the previously mentioned little spat I start,
Hmm.
which I did not mean to do, but it was very funny
And
and
I'm glad you
useful.
did.
I mean, it certainly made my job easier than I could have dreamed.
It
Well,
was
I was
yeah.
kind of asking about that because I don't remember that spat either.
Right. So
So
roughly,
where did it go from your question?
so Moore answers the question. The writer Pedrego Malloyd, who his name I'm probably just butchered, writes a couple part series for the Beat, unpacking the history of that kind of smoldering rivalry, mostly in terms of Morrison's occasional accusations and snipes at Moore. Morrison works with False Nedden. I think she's still using her surname. I don't know. She left the comic scene entirely a few years back.
Hmm.
But works with her to write a very detailed refutation of Moore's claims that is not always doing Morrison any favors. Morrison several times comes off as a bit petulant and desperate in that, frankly. Smolders on a little more quietly, and then um, there's a panel event that Phil alluded to where I forget where Moore is asked a couple of hostile questions. Uh, Padraig eventually sets up an interview with Moore to clarify his positions, and it's like an 8 question interview that runs 50,000 words, or
Yep.
something
It's like three.
equally preposterous and lopsided, in which Moore goes off on several people, but culminates in just an absolutely vicious attack on Morrison. And that's roughly that. Neither of them have done or said much on the matter since. But there's a couple uh, blog post hot war that happens, and otherwise it's just smoldering rivalry.
Mhm. It's one of those where they definitely I don't know. I think people, finally took the hint to in that one brief period, people asked Alan Moore about Grant Morrison and then took the hint. But I think
I
that
think Alan Moore also stopped taking interviews from the sorts of people who would do that somewhere
yeah,
around along the line.
yeah. I mean, he already still gets questions about Watchmen, so it's
Yeah,
it's like enough of that, enough of that. And then I think that because I actually I was an attendant of Morrison Con in
Okay,
2012.
wow.
Yeah. And so people there were talking about it. They were talking about
Yeah.
the feud and and one of the people said, "Oh, it's clear that Moore still reads all of Morrison's stuff and probably enjoys it, but just doesn't publicly or something like that." So yeah, so it's one of those things that for people who were fans of at least Grant Morrison were obsessed with the implicit feud. Um,
Right. It was long a Moore's silence on Morrison over the years was tangible
hmm
because
hmm
Moore was not ever shy about praising any number of other colleagues, but just was dead silent on Morrison. And it did stick out, especially given the they're both wizards aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah, which was and still is a little odd because I mean it's one of those things that at that point in the initial flare up, I don't think I believed in magic yet. And even now, I find myself in a completely shifting regard of much more appreciative of Moore than Morrison, whereas at the time I would have been reversed. And I
Yeah.
think that that weirdly speaks to the nature of both of them as people, where Moore has been a steadfastly self. He's been himself this whole time, and he's had a strong concept, and who he is, what he does is eternalism. And Morrison has been the changeling, And so they like you said, they're two diametrically opposed of one person who is in pursuit of, something that will last for eternity, and the other is trying to be as popular as possible at all times.
Yeah. No, it's a very narcissism of small differences rivalry, but those are the best ones.
hmm it
Um,
really is, yeah.
and yeah, you have the rough difference. Morrison is very much the populist, more especially once he's written Watchmen and kinda is set for life, moves on to caring much more about art for art's sake in a way that Morrison doesn't do very often.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's in a way, it's been a while since I've reread any of their books. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's tough because whereas I think they're also interestingly opposed in how they responded to how they were treated by DC
Hmm.
specifically, and the ways in which one said, "Hey, I'm going to go off. The you've successfully swindled me, and you will never do so again." And the other stayed and was praised and had a brief sabbatical and then a prodigal phase. And I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this attempt at understanding, but okay, so here was the thought that branched off. Alan Moore, as you said, the nadir of his career is his for hire work, largely.
Yeah.
His DC stuff. Morrison, unfortunately, that's most of his best stuff. I I think, I mean, sure, We Three is probably
We
my
Tree,
favorite
obviously.
book. Yeah, yeah, my absolute favorite of his. But I mean, everything else
The
he's done for
Invisibles
DC.
is complicated. It's a very complicated love.
Yeah, and it's one where unfortunately I think that I mean I read The Filth before Invisibles, and because of that I end up loving The Filth more and kind of sticking with that and thinking The Invisibles was it's a book that it's like a party I showed up to after it was already over, is the best
Yeah.
way I would describe reading The
No, I
Invisibles.
can see it. I mean, and obviously, as a trans woman, I have some issues with Lord Fan,
Yes,
to put
I
it mildly.
yes.
And that is hardly the only problem of that broad flavor in The Invisible.
Yes, and that has become a more thorough line through Morrison's work for me as well.
No,
Of just
for someone who uses they them pronouns, they sure have a lot of transphobic bullshit in their career.
yes, yes, unfortunately. And that's where, at the time there was a part of me that wanted to say, well, because of society, it's hard to find good honest representation, but that's just an excuse. That's
Yeah.
that's saying that just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean it doesn't exist somewhere, and
And
you need to look harder.
also, many of Morrison's worst moments talking about queer people are the ones where they're palling around with Mark Millar. And
Yep,
that's not a mistake.
yep, yep,
That's not tried for good representation and missed. That's hanging around with the sleaziest edgelord in comics.
yep. Pretty much, pretty much. That's certainly one of those pairings that, gosh, it's another fascination of mine of how they were so chummy and are now so opposed. Um,
I know why they fell out too.
oh, okay. I mean,
I'm 99% certain I've put that together.
the internet rumors, uh, it speculates over, ghost writing issues of Ultimate X-Men and
Nope.
Planetary. I would love to hear. This has been something that has been nagging at me for
So there is
years.
like one Morrison interview from around the point of this feud, of the split, where
Hmm.
they allude to, where they complain about Miller trying to steal an artist from them, roughly. Um,
Oh,
and if you look at the timing and what must have happened, it is almost certain Miller tried to lure Quitely off of We Three to do something with him
um,
instead.
and then successfully. I mean, again, the fact that Morrison and Quietly haven't gotten back together after Jupiter's Children seems.
I've heard now. This one is pure. This is pure rumor. I do not.
Mhm.
The
Sure,
why
sure.
Morrison and Miller split. I have pretty well
No, that
sourced on. This one is just
that makes
rumor
sense.
I have heard. But I am given to understand that Morrison and Quitely, though they will still work together, are no longer particularly close after Morrison prank spiked Quitely with acid at a party.
Oh my, yeah, that would be quite the sensational rumor.
Yeah,
But we'll have to put a firm asterisk on that. But yes, that
yeah,
that
no, that's merely rumors I have heard. I
that's
would not.
that is. I mean, that enters interesting questions about Morrison's personal timeline because I was under the I hadn't kept up with their personal life. I mean, I haven't been a fan for a few years now, but the last I heard is that they were sober in the early 2000s. So for that Spike story to happen, I would imagine it would have been after 2012 if they were still chummy then. So that's a very odd sort of like, oh, when did drugs come back into the picture sort of
Yeah,
thing. But yeah, it's who knows?
yeah, I have no good info on that. It's just too good a
Yeah,
story not to
it's
share if we're gossiping.
absolutely, and that's exactly what that was. Yeah, so it's and I guess so to as I now stare at the weighty tome that will from hell that will stick with me for all these years. The having read it the week of this snowstorm. Um, it's it is I think it is one of those questions of hey, what's Morrison? You can look and say like, oh, what's Morrison's Watchmen, and they'll joke, oh, they're all my Watchmen, sort of thing. But you can say, okay, well then what's your From Hell? And I think they're left stammering.
Crickets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
you can
yeah,
even do Morrison's Promethea. You can even validly argue that
mm,
Promethea is Moore's Invisible, since that's the order the chronology works in.
fascinating. I mean, I love that's because I love Promethea. Promethea
Right.
is my
I
favorite more.
I I don't want to give too many spoilers for Last War in Albion that I'll be writing, years from now,
Hmm.
because it moves at the speed it does. But I think Promethea is a deliberate and straightforward response to the invisible.
That's astounding because I also remember at one point recalling that when Morrison was wrapping up the Invisibles, they wanted to do the coming around the mountain when she comes, but that was going to be the end of Promethea. And I was thinking about when all of those things were happening. I'm like, how would they have known the end of Promethea? And it makes sense if that those would be
Yeah,
works they're fighting over.
Prometheus starts in '99, right as the Invisibles is wrapped.
Yeah, yeah. So it is interesting that that is a response. I'm again, I will be sticking with it through the years to read that in crystallized form. But yes, that's exciting. That's very exciting to hear. Um, I would also be interested to if we're gazing into the crystal ball now. What do you think of the multiversity and the
It's
cursed comic sort of thing?
Oh, the cursed comic is interesting. I am not entirely sure I think the cursed comic was ethical.
Yeah, no, that's I when I first heard you say that, I balked and I thought, I don't know. But now I think I am agreeing with you in question. I don't think it was ethical.
I find myself thinking either the cursed comic was shady and a bit unethical, or Morrison is talking bullshit when they profess their beliefs about magic.
So this is Tad, I see you raising your hand.
This is another place where I need more explanation.
Yes. So this is back in I want to say it was coming out between 2014 and 2016. The Multiversity was a series of one-shots event
Yeah,
thing. More,
Multiversity, I know,
yeah,
though I haven't read, but the
yeah.
Curse comic I've never heard of.
Okay, so the Curse comic is an issue there called Ultra Comics that the cover says, "Do not read this." Like you to save reality, basically. And the story is it talks about it being a cursed comic. Um, you would be an interesting case study. I would urge you not to read it. I would be very curious. If, continue what
Yeah.
you're doing.
I haven't looked at it since it came out, really. Like that's not
Yeah,
one I've done a ton of time revisiting. So I'm
yeah,
open to changing my opinions about it when I get there. But I
yeah,
my rough default position is, all right, if you believe magic works the way you say you do, that you shouldn't have released that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there was at least one potential blind at play, but it's definitely not enough. I think that our current rise in fascism kind of shows that
Yeah,
that it was a failure. But yeah, but I think, and here's the thing that I also waffle on these days over Grant Morrison is whether or not they believe their own magical bullshit, you know, and because part of their magical ethos is not believing in things, is that believe in something in the moment, and then once you get what you want from it, stop believing in it. The and after reading Promethea, I think I looked at that and thought that's not okay. That's antithetical to what I want to do with with magic, with this thought, this life, so to speak.
yeah.
Yeah, it feels cruel.
Yeah, I think that Morrison is sincere in their belief about magic. It's just that Morrison's true will is something along the lines of be a rock star.
Mm, I see.
You
Yeah,
know, they go back to comics in the late 80s after a failed stint of being a rock star, and they never really stop looking to comics to give them the same high they had been chasing with Rockstar.
yeah,
Um, and Moore doesn't seem to have any love whatsoever for his fame.
yeah.
Well,
I don't know that he
this
particularly resents it, but
I think this is actually a good place for me to jump in with what's not quite a remedial level question.
Okay.
Um, I have long thought that about 80% of the public persona of Alan Moore is designed to, as J.D. Salinger's was, prolong the mystique and allow him to not have to deal with the people that he doesn't want to deal with. Um,
so I think it is
so
slightly more.
what I'm well, let me finish
Yeah,
because it's kind of a two-part question. What I'm hearing from you is that you both feel like Morrison does similar, except that what he wants is to bring the fans rather than so.
I think that's an
Um,
interesting observation.
yeah,
certainly, you can't see Alan Moore running a Substack with an eternal Q&A.
Right,
right.
right.
Um, I think that I think that Moore's relationship with fame and the public is not nowhere near as hostile as JD Sound. Um,
But
and
I mean, here's the thing we discovered when Salinger died. His wasn't as hostile as he made it out to be.
right. But I think that Moore is a bit of a
And that was
yeah,
just the easy illusion, not like they're identical either.
right.
What I mean is I
No, no,
think
I
that
get you.
his
Mhm.
public image is molded to allow him to live the private life that he wants to. And that doesn't mean it's fake,
Right. I mean, I
but
think
what we see
the big,
publicly I don't think is really that
Well, I think it's
much
an
of Alan
iceberg.
Moore.
I think it's an
Yeah.
iceberg, you know? Um, I don't I think his public persona is still being honest,
Mhm.
whereas I question whether or not Morrison's public persona is
Well,
honest.
but this is where I go. If Morrison is wanting to be the rock star, etc.,
Mhm.
is that dishonest? Is his public persona actually dishonest,
That's
or
that's that's a larger
Well,
question of
is it
they
driven by different priorities?
they certainly I think Morrison approaches their public persona in a little bit of a David Bowie periodic reinvention.
Mhm.
And they even talk about that a little bit in some of their early '90s interviews because they,
Ironically, I was just listening to Cameron Crowe's autobiography and fascinated by his 18 months with David Bowie, where he went from being Ziggy Stardust to the Thin White Duke to leaving for Germany. So yes, that was in my mind too.
yeah, Morrison is always very attentively crafting a public persona, and doing it, I think, with the level of honesty that's involved in a lot of professional wrestlers. That's actually the analogy I'd use, where you're taking elements of your actual character and pushing and exaggerating them to create a character you can play full time.
Yeah. Yeah.
More, I think Moore's public persona, in terms of pushing people away slash bringing them in, nothing about his public persona is doing that nearly as much as the fact that he doesn't like to leave Northampton doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, he has just made the decision to be a consciously, rooted in his community writer in a unfashionable community in a city in England that is very much not London.
But
So
And
more,
in
and
an
he's very
email and
offline.
Zoom age, he could still be very, very present
right,
without
but he
leaving Northampton.
I think
is
it's a
not an
choice and it's fair.
Yeah.
right.
I'm
He
not
also
saying that
is
it's
a
unfair. I'm saying that the choice is beyond not leaving Northampton.
well, yeah, and you're right. Second choice, which is one he made long before it became a choice of the era of Zoom, but he doesn't have the internet. He has assistants. Roughly, if he needs something Googled, he has people to do that for
Right.
I
him.
love that.
Yeah. Um, so more
I love that their
when
job has probably gotten easier since they got it.
yes,
Because probably when they got it, they had to go to the library and most possibly multiple libraries and wait
equally,
for books to come in. And
I bet Moore asks a lot of questions that Google doesn't
I believe
isn't good
I
at.
well I no I but Google will help guide your search better
Oh, for sure.
than starting at the Northampton. And I'm not saying that the Northampton Public Library is bad. It might be phenomenal, but I know that
No,
I'm enough of a luddite that I still like getting into the weeds with research
same.
and being able to start with Google still makes my life infinitely easier.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But no, I think that Moore's kind of inaccessibility is an incidental product of some decisions that I don't think he took primarily to be inaccessible. I think his commitment to Northampton is entirely real, deep, and spiritual at this point.
Oh, that
Mhm, mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think his desire not to be online, mainly, I suspect he was avoiding comics fandom, but he always does a ton of interviews, and he is. I mean, I've met him once and can
Oh,
vouch for the rough truth of this. But by every account I have ever heard, he is a profoundly friendly and approachable man to
Hmm.
people he runs into. So
Well, but
yeah.
I
that
think
was that was
yeah,
actually part of my point, is that's not
right,
the persona he cultivates.
But I guess
But it
when the
is what
word
I've heard from I mean, with both of these people,
yeah.
so
I mean,
the
I
the
don't
other
know a
thing
lot of
about
their public, but I know a handful of people that know each of them. So I've heard
right.
random personal stories.
The other thing that I think is key about Alan Moore's public persona is the kind of defining element of his public persona, his routine shitting on the comics industry,
Right.
isn't something he has ever gone out of his way to do. It's just that he provides the interviewer with the pull quote every time he gets the question, and
Right.
lazy interviewer after lazy interviewer asks him the question.
Absolutely.
yeah, and the full
Um,
response is usually entails several sentences of "I'm so tired of this question. Why do people keep asking me?"
Right. And for some reason, it's never Alan Moore. I'm so tired of this question. It's Alan
Well,
Moore.
which is,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to ask this question now so I don't forget to ask it later.
Uh-huh.
It's why, and you're probably much more of an expert, but it's why I don't actually think he's done with comics. I think we'll get more comics from
Hmm.
him. He loves the
So
medium too much.
I do think we're reasonably likely to get more comics from him. That's purely because I know he has a couple of scripts at Avatar that never got published.
Ah,
Yeah, but
Um,
I think
Avatar has a lot of those scripts. Yeah.
I think
yeah,
there might be more than that even. I
I
feel
at
like
this,
it's
yeah,
J.D. Salinger and the Glass stories, where it's like, I am so tired of
Hmm.
answering all of these questions. We're going
I
to
at
do it
this,
quietly. We're going to drop them from time to
yeah,
time,
But the thing about it,
possibly
though,
posthumously.
yeah, and the thing about it, though, is that ultimately those comics will not be about superheroes.
Oh no,
And yeah,
absolutely not.
yeah.
yeah.
No, no,
I I
I
don't think
didn't
there's
say
going to
that.
be yeah. I don't think there's going to be anything but the handful of Avatar scripts. I think
I,
he
I,
is legitimately done.
okay. Yeah. I mean, I have yet to read his novels and his short story collection, but from hearing that he's embarking on a series of novels, The Great When,
Yeah.
sounds like, yeah, that sounds big enough to where comics might not have the time.
Right. And I also look at his last years of doing comics, and he really had dropped to where Avatar was the only press he was willing to work with.
Hmm.
So it's a certain where do I think he'd come back? I don't see him returning to Image because he'd have done that already if he was ever going to return to Image.
Oh
He's
yeah.
clearly not going to return to Marvel or DC.
Hmm.
I'd be a little surprised if Avatar ever publishes anything again. That's the big barrier to seeing those.
Yeah.
So, like, where's he going to show up? Boom? I just don't see it.
First, second.
For a second. Oh, good. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
like
that's where Paul
Oh.
Pope just showed up.
right,
Uh, I
but
mean,
Paul Pope does not
he
have the
he
visceral
self-published in a
suspicion of
heart. He could self-publish in a heartbeat.
he's not going to touch that again after big numbers.
Hmm.
Like,
Well, but all of that also assumes single issues. Self-publishing a graphic novel or a collection is massively different than trying to self-publish single issues of something on some sort of schedule and get it distributed through a comic shop.
but he also doesn't need to in a way that isn't true for Paul Pope.
Right.
Paul Pope is not going to be able to trivially launch a series of prose novels.
Right.
Hmm.
Um, Alan Moore has other options, has enough money that one of the valid options is fuck it, I quit entirely,
Hmm.
and really does seem quite not just burnt out, but brokenhearted about comics in a way that I would be genuinely surprised if he ever went back.
We'll
I
see.
could see that.
I
I
mean,
hope,
I can see that too. But
yeah.
I don't know if it's witch casting, which is again weird because like I started this as I like Alan Moore probably significantly less than either one of you, or if it's just some weird thing I see in the way he even talked about leaving comics, that it was like it didn't feel like he hated comics or was done with comics as much as he was done with the industry.
Oh
The
yeah.
thing I think I find persuasive isn't actually on why I don't think he's coming back. Isn't actually a quote from him. It's one from his daughter Leia,
Okay.
Hmm.
who um, very movingly noted about all of these Alan Moore is so bitter about comics of roughly you are everyone is underselling just how much comics broke his heart. He
Hmm.
loved comics so much and got this angry at
Right.
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And given Alan Moore's deep stubbornness, I don't see him going back on that anger.
Yeah.
Because he is one of the most stubborn motherfuckers to live. Never mind in comics. He's just a
Goals.
gobsmackingly stubborn. Oh, same. I
Yeah.
admire that tremendously about him. But uh, he does not change his mind lightly, easily, or often at all.
Hmm.
He very much resembles Blake in that regard.
Hmm. And I guess I would have to read uh, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen to kind of see how, because weren't those like his last comics published?
You haven't
Um,
read League of Extraordinary
Yeah,
Gentlemen?
I believe
I've made
Century
an
was
attempt.
the absolute last.
I started it and I wasn't in the right place for it. That's another thing that From Hell is probably the quickest I've dove in and devoured and enjoyed an Alan Moore book because usually I have to stop and start them two or three times, but From Hell was just right
Yeah.
in, never stopping. Yeah. Um, so
No,
yeah, so
I've never rated a League, if I'm being honest. I think that is another one of his weaker efforts.
yeah, and I mean, I
But
think
I
the
did
idea
like,
is probably greater than the
yeah,
execution.
I did like of his, late work. I thought Providence was pretty
Mm.
fun.
Oh yeah,
I had a lot of time for Providence. That's probably for my money his last major, contribution to comics.
Providence is phenomenal.
But I didn't love the first Great Wen book, Long London. I did think that Jerusalem is jaw dropping.
Okay,
Jerusalem is as good as From Hell.
wow, yeah. I mean, I've from what little I know of it, it sounds like again an all
I
timer.
have
I'm going to need to
only
set aside like a
gotten,
month to read.
yeah, I have only gotten halfway through it a couple of times now, just because of attention and time issues.
Yeah,
But
and the
I
middle
will
yeah, the middle
I was
third is a
gonna
bit
say I will
ridiculous.
still actually agree with your statement regarding its quality,
Yeah,
and I'll also toss out uh the second time I got halfway through it was after Emil Ferris had told me that she had spent the last month listening to it while she worked,
Mm.
and
the audiobook is stellar. I will
the audiobook is how
genuinely,
I've been doing it.
yeah, no,
Um,
audiobook is, I mean, especially because
but it's Alan
may
Moore
it
dense and it's 60 plus hours.
Wow,
it
yeah.
sure fucking is.
Um,
There's a great story about the audiobook where the narrator, Simon Vance, that's Simon Vance.
yeah.
There's also notable audiobook narrator Simon Preble, and I always have to pause
Mm.
there.
Oh,
But Simon Vance relates the story of he was talking to Neil Gaiman, unfortunately, but um, and said he was doing the audiobook for Jerusalem. And Gaiman said, "Oh, you're going to want to go to Northampton and meet Alan Moore then." And Vance was like, What the hell are you talking about? I have never done anything like that on any book I have ever read. That's just not how this works." Sits down, reads the book, finishes it, closes it. I need to go to Northampton and meet Alan Moore.
Yeah, that's astounding. Oh, that is a wonderful story. Yeah, I mean,
I think
especially because
actually the Tempest, not the was the last.
Tempest was the
Extraordinary
last one.
Jones.
Century is before
Oh,
that. Right. No,
okay.
Century is
Right.
that trio of one shots from Top Chef.
Right. From
Mm,
different years.
mhm. And then, yeah, so that, wow. Because Jerusalem is the one it's set in Northampton. And
It's set
it's
in a small couple block region of Northampton.
Right.
yeah. It's like Ulysses for Northampton across all of time,
Right.
something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's
As
a good
if
way of putting it.
give or take. Um, yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
like if you take Dickens' density and Rushdie's density and stack it on top of each other, that's how dense Jerusalem is. And I say that in loving both Dickens and Rushdie, but not being able to get through their entire catalogs yet because each book is an endeavor rather than something to pass the time.
No,
Which I don't have a
Jerusalem.
problem with, but I don't always have the
Right. No, reading Jerusalem is
bandwidth
a
for.
spiritual discipline.
Right.
mhm, mhm.
It is very much, set aside your time and decide to do some work.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it
Right.
is
And what I've
stunning
discovered so
and
far is that I cannot do it as my car listen, and I cannot do it as my one chapter as I fall asleep or half an hour before I fall asleep listen, because neither one of them has allowed me to completely embrace it. So it is high on my list of the next time I actually decide that I've got a week where I'm going to be devoting multiple hours a day to one book, listen
yeah.
and or read.
I
And
bet it's a
actually, at this
good
point, I think I'm going to do both together. I think I'm going to
Mhm.
yeah.
listen while reading to try to just
If
soak
you
as
drop
much
out
of
of
it in as
one, you'll pick up
possible.
the other.
Right.
Certainly there's one chapter where that is actually by miles the best way to do it. The
Oh,
famous Lucia Joyce chapter.
Right.
yeah. I imagine. I imagine. That I mean, I got a small glimpse of that reading the German page or two in From Hell. Because
Yeah.
I took German as my foreign language in high school and college, and so I was like, oh, let's see how much of this I remember. All right, enough to not feel like I need to translate. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so goodness. I of course I'm now mentally stammering, thinking of I you know
Well, you've got 10 minutes before I jump into closing questions.
right,
So make it
right,
good.
right. Oh, dang. Okay. That's gonna be tough. That's gonna be tough. So I
She's
guess
going to be writing for a while. I'm
yeah.
certain we'll be able to have her back.
Oh
You
yeah.
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
have to feel like you have to get all of it done now, Phil.
That's good. Thank you for that reminder.
This is what I have to tell my wife when we're vacationing places. We can come
I
back.
right. I guess I will mention because I mentioned it in the email of unverified personal gnosis, which I wanted to
Yes.
as a jokey way of I've got all of this gnosis, but no one to verify it. Um,
Hmm.
and I guess it's weird because okay, so this is the one I'm going to land on where in 2014 I had a psychotic break that was also a magical experience. And I actually, the silliest bit of that was running into, through a series of events at C2E2 that year, running into an old man with a giant beard playing a Game Boy who told me that I want to talk to the real people again. And in hindsight, I interpreted that as Alan Moore, but I also know that factually it could never have been him. Um,
No, because he wouldn't play a Game Boy.
fair, much
Because
less
he
leave North
wants
Hampton.
us to think they wouldn't play a Game Boy. Don't ruin Phil's fantasy.
That's okay. That's okay. Um, you know, but yeah, it's
I mean, was
the
it an original Game Boy or one of the modern
it
crap
was a
ones?
DS. It was a Game Boy
Okay,
DS.
that I
Yeah. No
can't
way.
see.
No way.
Exactly.
I could see
No.
Exactly.
him playing
Yeah.
Tetris on an old school one.
Sure.
Right. The black and white one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah,
Black
no.
and green, please get it right.
No. Fair. Fair.
Right,
Fair.
right, right. So, and I guess
Really
where I
green
land,
and green.
I guess where I land on magic and why it's important to me is because, going through therapy, talking about, hey, I had these hallucinations and delusions. What do they mean? And the doctor's kind of like, nothing, and I'm like, but why does the brain do this if it doesn't mean anything, you know? And so that's kind of been something that's puzzled at me, and it's allowed me to gain some more answers. And I guess that all it's weird because it preceded part of the thing that was odd was talking to the first therapist about Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, and that therapist not being able to realize they were real people and not characters.
Ah,
Yeah,
they do sound improbable.
they do. They do. Thankfully, the second therapist I talked to had read The Invisibles and knew who Alan Moore and Grant Morrison were and whatnot. So he was very helpful
A
in being
much
able.
better fit.
Yes, exactly, exactly. He was able to help me in that way. But at the same time, it's that line of it's in our heads that gods are terrifyingly real. Yeah, that's hard to disagree with, and you know the core of other experiences I've had. I feel like I've rambled enough without landing on an actual question. Um,
Welcome to 22 Panels. This is
yeah,
what we do.
yeah, it really is.
This is why Phil fits in.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I guess if you had to say something to a general listener that might have experienced something that they don't fully understand, what vague words of wisdom would you give them in that moment?
What happened, what you experienced is less important than the question of what story and understanding you're going to tell about it. The question, what do I do with this, is actually the one that matters, and you have a lot of freedom. Um, it the first doctor isn't completely wrong in saying it means nothing. You were literally just going crazy, and your brain was misfiring signals that didn't point anywhere.
The first doctor carrying wonderful syntactic ambiguity here, you being a Doctor Who scholar.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
When William Hartnell showed up in the midst of your delusions, they were like, "This is useless nonsense." He was right.
sure.
Um, but on one level, that's absolutely true. But on another level, what is going to matter is the story you decide that you're telling this, and you have a lot of freedom in that. I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people who are looking at magic make is assuming that there are rules you have to know before you touch this. And there aren't. You actually that's the thing that makes it magic, is that you get to make up the rules and declare what they are. That's literally the part of it that's magic. And so yeah, I think the advice I would give is figure out what you want and need out of the story that you're trying to tell, and tell the story to serve those purposes.
Thank you. I like that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Two closing questions, required closing questions.
All right.
The first one I think you're going to have a fun answer for.
All right.
I've been doing this podcast for a little more than 4 years now, and I feel like I've entered the twilight zone. The number of
All right.
people who I consider my friends, who used to be names on a page, the conversations that I've gotten to have, the joking argument we had just an hour ago about whether a friend of mine is a war criminal just because he worked for the CIA, which you have a legitimate point. I still I'm not trying to, but that's a surreal moment. That's not a conversation that people wind up having
All right.
on a regular basis. But just from being in and around comics, my life is just, I sometimes almost feel guilty as I watch the world burn around, that my life is actually pretty cool and fun right now. Um, Tell me a surreal story from your time in and around comics.
A surreal story from my time in and around comics.
Yeah. A
Um,
time where you just had to pinch yourself and go, am I really here?
Yeah, 2020, beginning of February, so right before things are starting to go wrong. I remember reading the early COVID headlines in our hotel, but my husband and I were in the UK and just had an absolutely ridiculous day where our last day there, saw a huge William Blake exhibit that the Tate was putting on, and then met up with Kieran Gillen, who I chatted with a little bit online, and
Good guy.
uh, arranged to have dinner with him. So just this absurd, perfect day right before everything went horrible in the world, uh, where I got to see a bunch of original William Blake art, and then was
Wow.
having dinner at a swanky Indian restaurant with Kieran Gillen, and it's just sort of all right, my life is weird and incredible.
Did Chrissy come too?
She hung out with us a bit earlier in the day. We walked around the
Okay.
V&A museum and then went to dinner. She bailed before dinner,
Gotcha.
but I've since been to their house and I've spent tons of time talking to Chrissy as
Yeah.
well.
That's
They're
awesome.
fantastic. They're
Oh, they're both
fantastic. We
delightful people.
we've had Chrissy on a couple of times and
Oh,
Kieran
good.
on once, and
Good
and
ones.
I am like
I
major
I, I
major fans of
intrinsic
both of them as
I
people
intrinsically
as well
respect
as
a podcast that has Chrissy on more than Kieran.
Hmm.
I had
That's
Chrissy on
that's
twice
that.
before I had Kieran.
Hmm.
Um,
You're
actually,
doing something right, Chad. You hear that?
Kieran was on as a favor to Phil through Chrissy
Amazing.
It was. And that's where I
because
got to.
I absolutely adored Golden Rage,
Oh,
adored
Golden Rage
it.
is great.
Yes.
The clown issue is just
Right.
mind blowing.
Yep. Yep. So
the
that
the
my required last question, because this is how I managed to continue adding to my never-ending reading list.
Hmm.
Um, tell me something you love, preferably a comic, but we don't have rules. Preferably storytelling, but we don't have rules. Um, but something that you love that not enough people around you have read or experienced, and you'd really like them to, so you have more people to discuss it with.
I mean, I'm tempted to just say Jerusalem. No, if I'm
I
gonna
mean
go
that
with,
we've talked about that. So if you can give me another one, that would be great.
I
But that's a
I got
fair
you.
answer.
I got you. I'm going to go just sort of one door down from Jerusalem, in part because it's the chapter I'm working on right now. But the five spoken word pieces Alan Moore did as magical performances, the Moon and Serpent Grand Egyptian Theater of Marvels, the Birth Call, which does have a comics adaptation by Campbell, um, the Highbury Working, Snakes and Ladders, also adapted by Campbell, and Angel Passage. There are these five. You have to find, MP3s or YouTube videos or anything. They're totally out of print, but they're these spoken word performances he did as, site specific performances that were magical rituals in the moment he did them, that then got documented as CDs that are some of the most mind blowing and influential things I have ever read. They completely shaped my thoughts on magic. They completely shaped how I write criticism. They're absolutely integral and formative to me, and no one has read them.
All right. We can
I think
change
I
that.
might have won one of the two that Campbell adapted,
Yeah,
but I'm certain I
the
haven't
birth
read
call
both,
and
and I certainly haven't read all of them.
yeah,
So they're now on my
birth call
list.
and snakes and ladders are the ones that people have seen as comics. But honestly, what you want is because it's spoken word with a ambient musical accompaniment,
Right,
and the way you want them is with Alan Moore's rich booming Northampton accent
right,
just right in your ear.
And I
right.
assume you've taken his master class where he performs the mandrill.
I mean I've seen the mandrill performed a couple of times, and I think three or four separate versions of Old Gangsters Never Die at this point in my life. But
Yeah.
these ones with the first two, he's got one of his backing musicians is David J of Bauhaus and Love and
Okay.
Rockets,
Wow.
who's also from Northampton and a magician.
Wrong, Love and Rockets, but that's forgive him.
I mean, named after the right Love and Rockets.
Mhm.
Yeah, but so close that like there was debate for a long time about who was named after who. Became a whole storyline in Love and Rockets.
That's funny.
Amazing. But yeah, those spoken word pieces, if you can track them down, are absolutely incredible listens.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I'm certain that we will invite you back because it has been a joy.
My
Uh,
pleasure, and I'm certain I'll
uh,
say yes.
I'm certain that everybody but my mom was happy to hear voices other than mine for a change. Um,
You know,
and maybe even my mom, because I just spent a couple days there. Um, and I definitely
All right.
need to go read some
Well,
more of this than I have so far, because you did pique my interest.
yeah. Hi,
So
Tad's mom.
yeah. For 22 panels, this has been Elizabeth Sandifer, and we will see you after the next page.